Welcome back to the Canine Campus Podcast. This is episode 11, our premiere show for 2007. And in this episode, we're going to start with some listener mail and then move right into a few common puppy issues and how to deal with them. Welcome back, Devin. How are you doing?
I am doing well.
Good. So
glad to be back.
I understand we have some emails.
We do. Throughout our podcasting, we have had emails come in, and in the last couple of weeks, we've had even more come in asking where we are, so I'm glad that we're back. I want to start with Diane in North Carolina, and Diane is trying to find a trainer that shares her same philosophical approach to dog training. She listens to our podcast. She's very much appreciative of the positive approach, and I tried to help her find some trainers down there through the APDT trainer search, and in contacting those trainers, she's been frustrated by one aspect of their training or another aspect of their training. And one of the things that I wanted to let people know, and I want to let Diane know this too, because I haven't responded to the last email. So I'm sorry, Diane, but this is what I was thinking.
Hope you're listening, Diane.
You can learn a lot from trainers that aren't necessarily 100% on board with your training philosophy. So what I'm saying is I will take a class from a trainer in town who... There actually is a trainer in town who calls themselves positive, although they use citronella spray as a positive punishment. So in that way, I guess they are positive.
That's an aversive, yeah.
To handle unwanted behaviors. Okay. I am completely opposed to this on every level. However, it's a small group class. It's hard for me to find classes during my time schedule because, dog trainers tend to all train at the same time.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for me to work in a room with other dogs that are high distraction. And I do not let that opportunity go because I have some differences in philosophy. Right. However, this trainer will absolutely not spray my dog.
Right.
So,
and as the client, you can set the ground rules for that.
And that's my point. My point is, if you are someone who does not feel comfortable saying, I don't agree with that, or I'm not going to go along with that, then do not work with trainers that don't share your philosophy.
Right,
but if you have no problem saying, look, I'm in this class because I need to work in a distracted environment, philosophically, not wild about some of the choices you make, do you mind if I just sort of do my own thing?
Right, absolutely.
And, if you have that agreement, it can still be really helpful.
Sure, yeah.
It can still be really helpful.
And now you mentioned there are trainers out there that they consider themselves mostly positive or, kind of positive. Now you had some questions to ask. Yeah. Going into this, if you're new to a town, new to an area, you don't know any of the trainers, what are the questions that you recommend?
There are two primary questions that I asked to get the lay of the land. The first one is, what do you do when a dog does something wrong?
Well, that'll tell a lot. Huh?
And by the way, there's obviously millions of questions to ask, but when I've whittled down the trainers that have identified themselves as quote-unquote positive, that I'm working with the assumptions that they are reward-based to a certain extent. It might be food reward, it might be play reward, but that they're already comfortable with that notion. But once I've established that, the two questions I ask are, what do you do when a dog does something wrong? And how do you handle barking dogs in class? And that tells me a lot about a trainer. Because it's really easy to reward when things are going well.
Right.
I want to know what happens when they're not.
Right, exactly.
And I run 9 to 10 dog classes a week, and I can guarantee you that in at least 80% of them, at some point or another, especially early on in a session, there are barking dogs.
Oh, sure. I just went through that with our puppy, as a matter of fact.
Yes, who we'll be talking about shortly. And so my point is not that the listeners out there have to hear the same answers I'm comfortable with.
Right, but
those answers are very
those
telling.
will tell a lot.
Right.
If you ask somebody, what do you do when a dog barks, and they say, I put a spray collar on them.
That tells me something. Or I use spray water or vinegar.
Right.
Or I use a sharp reprimand.
Or in your class, as the case might be, you use abandonment
heavily,
and which I found very effective with the puppy. But those answers are going to be a real key to whether they're positive, they like positive but use positive punishment, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like, going back to the case in our locality where you ask somebody if they were a positive trainer, and they said they'd like to think they are.
Yeah.
But when you really get down to what happens in practice, it's kind of an 85% thing.
Right, that is not the case. And also,
Right.
one size doesn't fit all. So, for example, I use abandonment a lot for barking dogs in class, but if it's anxiety barking or stress barking, abandonment can often make it worse.
Right.
So, in that case, I like to use food toys to get a dog engaged. I like to use play. Often I'll tell an owner, let's take the dog outside for a break. Let's shorten things up. So there's a lot of different things I'll try. What I won't do is positive punishment.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like when you ask that question, the answer will tell you a lot, not only about their technique, but also about their experience. Kind of, how many options do they have for dealing with these kinds of things.
Exactly. And the same thing is gleaned from what do you do when a dog does something wrong.
Excellent. And so how's the search working out for our friend in North Carolina?
Diane's hanging in there from the last email, but she's been somewhat frustrated, but what I really, really like is she's committed to this path.
Right.
And that commitment will take her far. And it sounds like she's been having some success on her own.
Right.
I had a chance to speak with her on the phone, and we talked about door greetings, and she introduced an in-your-place cue that seems to be working well in her house.
Excellent. And Diane is in the Raleigh area of North Carolina?
I can't remember where, but she's in North Carolina. I think she's in Durham.
We believe this letter is from the Raleigh-Durham area. So if you're listening and you're in the Raleigh-Durham area and you know good positive reinforcement trainers, please visit our website. In the comment section of the podcast page, you can leave some advice or references on any good experiences you've had with positive trainers and help out a fellow
I'm so
dog
glad you
lover.
brought that back, because someone did post a comment a few months back about food toys. They have a breed that's destroying even the black Kongs, and wondered if I had any suggestions about that. And I did post an answer to that. I'm not sure they got it. It's an addendum to their post.
Right.
And basically I recommended that they choose items that are by nature destructible. So bones make a really good food toy.
Sure.
Premier has a new food toy out, and I can't remember the name of it, but basically it's frozen. It's ice. It's treats and food in ice, and the dog's got to work through the ice.
Like an ice mold that a toy goes in the middle of, or food goes in the middle of.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that could be a great thing.
Great.
Okay, then Kathy from Montreal. She checked in. She has 2 giant schnauzers, Roxy and Dante. And one of her questions was how to build anticipation in training. And I recommend that she check out Susan Garrett's website, which we'll reference at the end of this in the notes. Susan Garrett has won the World Agility title, I think, twice. I know she's won it at least once, but I think twice. And actually, she's trained a couple of dogs that have won Schutzen, too, and she's never even seen the sport.
Wow.
So she is really, really the mistress of this topic. And what I would say just in general, one of the best ways to build anticipation and excitement in your dog is through play. And what that means is you have got to make play a valuable resource. You can't give it away for free. So, for example, Susan Garrett uses Tug a lot and Tug toys a lot. So, obviously, the dogs do not have free access to those toys. They come out only when Susan presents them.
Okay.
And when Susan is working with them. So she's a much more advanced person on this topic than I. But I have to say, after I saw her at the APDT, I came back and introduced a Tug toy to each of my dogs with a chase me, and then Tug, chase me, and then Tug. And I've been using that as a backup emergency recall.
Okay.
And one day, Silly, our little hound guy, got out the door and was into the woods, and I didn't even try calling him. I came back inside, got that toy, ran outside, started squeaking it, chase me, chase me, chase me, and he came flying. It was one of the nicest recalls I've ever seen.
Wow. So it sounds like what you're saying there is that it's kind of like with people, if you've got something every day, it's not that special.
Exactly. Susan Garrett is all about controlling resources, and she used it heavily to rehabilitate one of her dogs who had some behavior issues. But I think that it's a good lesson for all of us. The 2 things I've learned from her in particular is play is hugely underutilized as a reward.
Right.
Hugely. And in class, it's hard to utilize play, because if you've got 6 dogs in a relatively small area and someone pulls out a ball and throws it for their dog as a reward, if there's a lab or a golden retriever in class, they're going to dive for the ball too.
Right.
So in a group setting like that, play isn't as practical. However, I have been breaking up my classes with a lot of dog play, per Susan Garrett. And the other thing I learned is control your resources.
Sure. Well, Susan Garrett's books are available on dogwise.com.
And her website's great too.
Yeah, and we really like Dogwise for this kind of literature. We'll have a link to that in our show notes. So that's it for viewer mail for this show. We're kind of running out of time. We have letters from Jason, from Liz, from Becky, from several others that we're going to start addressing in the next episode, which will come sooner than the last episode in this one. But there was also some stuff you wanted to talk about with puppies. And I know there's been a new puppy in the Canine Campus household over the holidays. We've been able to relive what's involved and what's different about training puppies than just the regular old dog. So what do you have for us on that, Tevin?
Well, you are correct. In early October, a small, approximately 8-week-old hound mix showed up literally on our front door. And normally what I do when this happens, and this usually happens a couple times a year, I socialize the puppy heavily while I look for a home.
Right.
And I did that very thing with this puppy and even found him a home and then was unable to part with him for some reason.
Right.
I could not let this puppy go. So enter Surprise. That is his name. And he's a plot hound mix of some sort. And I have to say, I have a great empathy with my puppy socialization class participants. Because up to this point, our dogs are 4 and 6. So we'd really left puppyhood kind of behind.
Right.
So one of the things that I wanted to do with this puppy, I'm much further along the path of dog training and education in terms of dog training by the time this puppy came along. And so I wanted to do some things differently. I have no regrets about what we did with the other dogs, but
right.
In my puppy class, I have really, really, really stressed socialization and bite inhibition. In fact, if you sign up for the puppy socialization class at Canine Campus, there's almost no obedience in it. Come when called is in it and sit is in it.
Right.
But pretty much the class is about socializing to other dogs, to other people, to novel experiences, as well as bite inhibition. And so when we got this puppy, I decided not to charge the clicker. Normally when a puppy came through the door, within about 24 hours, I had the clicker charged and I was working obedience, sit down and tricks and the like. And I did not do that at all with this dog. He was not in the house for long when I did teach him sit, but not on cue. I used a hand signal to lure him into a sit before I gave him food. And in short order, he was pretty much sitting for everything good. Once again, not on cue, not being asked for. And I decided that was pretty much going to be the only obedience I did until the socialization period was over, other than recalls. So he was sitting to go through doors. He was sitting to be fed. He was sitting to get chew toys. He was sitting to get affection. But that was all offered because he'd learned that sitting really caused great things to happen.
Right.
And he must know that we're talking about him because he's chiming in the background. Okay, so what did I do? The socialization period lasts roughly from 4 to 14 weeks. And in that period of time, puppies develop the seek avoidance blueprint that they utilize for the rest of their life when encountering novelty. Now, we talked a little bit about this in the Brainy edition, and how socialization basically encourages or creates dendritic branching in the brain. And the more dendritic branching that a dog has, the less reactive they are as adult dogs.
Right.
So what is really important to note is that your puppy's personality will not only be determined by her breed characteristics and parentage, but almost equally by her socialization period. It's the nature and nurture thing.
Okay.
And
this is the nurture side of it.
It's the nurture side. And I've had many a shy puppy in class blossom with aggressive socialization.
Right,
when I see
right.
a shy puppy, you know, I tell the owners for the next month, abandon all obedience other than house training and crate training and socialization and bite inhibition. And I should have said that we were also house training and crate training while this was going on.
Yeah.
So what we're really saying here is that the experiences your puppy has during the socialization period will directly affect her personality. And I don't think people know they can have that kind of an impact, and they can.
Right.
And so you've got to be careful about socialization. You've got to do it well, but it really pays off. We're going to post a link to my socialization instructions as well as my socialization scavenger hunt. When I was an intern with Pat Miller, a fellow intern, Catherine Gossett, who I believe is in Iowa, told me that she had come up with this great socialization scavenger hunt. Because when you tell people socialize your puppy, they're like, great, but to who, to what, or they say, well, I've got other dogs at home. I've got, my dog gets exposed to the dogs at home or to my kids. And that's kind of like homeschooling. It's not that isn't good, but it's not enough exposure to the world. So the puppy socialization scavenger hunt is a great place to start. I have 90 novel items listed. And there's also plenty of blank spaces to add your own.
Your own in, right.
But the bottom line is this. If you introduce your dog to 90 novel items during the socialization period, it is equivalent to exposing them to 90 novel items each month for the first year of their life.
Wow.
So when people come to me and their puppy's past the socialization period and they say, well, I really need to socialize my puppy, it's doable. They will never make up completely what they lost. They can make great headway. But it's 90 items that first couple of months or 90 items every month for the first year. It's a lot harder to accomplish. Okay, so, how to socialize a puppy. Know that food is good. So at this point in your puppy's life, never leave home without great treats. And basically pair great treats with everything novel they encounter, whether they show fear about it or not. It's one thing not to show fear. It's another thing to be excited about something. So what we want to do is, elements that are neutral for them. The leaf blowing across the sidewalk might be neutral. Well, let's make it a good thing.
Sure.
And, I took Surprise to a friend of mine that has a horse farm and let him encounter the horses and the cows.
Right.
And I took him to the downtown mall where there's a lot of people, a lot of other dogs. There's a merry-go-round. There's an amphitheater. There's a lot going on there. And what I basically tried to do is every day, at least 5 days a week, I tried to take him somewhere where he would experience something new.
And rewarded him for it.
Paired all the new stuff with food.
So, and again, you haven't charged the clicker at this point.
No.
You're not really teaching behaviors, but you are using
I'm
food
rewarding
rewards.
bravery. I'm rewarding bravery. Okay. So, and this is kind of actually, it's a combination operant and classical conditioning. The puppy has an emotional association with food. It's a happy thing.
Sure.
And I'm trying to transfer that emotion to the world, to elements in the world that this puppy will encounter for the rest of his life. Vacuum cleaners, horses, wheelchairs, strollers, backpacks. Some things you can anticipate, some things you can't. But if you aggressively socialize your puppy during this period, when they do encounter novelty in life, they will look at it as something good. Now think about this. In terms of the socialization period, if you're an antelope, if you're a baby antelope, you have a socialization period. You have a period of time in your life where you find out what's safe and what isn't. Let's say in that period of time, you do not encounter a lion. So you know nothing about lions.
Right.
You're out of your socialization period, you see a lion, and you think, oh, well, that's something that's kind of interesting. I'm going to go over there and check out that lion. And that is not going to go well for you as an antelope.
Not going to be a happy ending on
So you
that
can
one,
see why nature has set up this system. If you don't encounter it in your socialization period, avoid it. Assume it's not good for you.
Gotcha.
For your safety. So you can see why it makes sense that this is how...
Which is
we're
why,
all hardwired.
And that's why the breadth of this puppy socialization program is so important.
Right.
Part of the idea is, as much as we love having our dogs being polite and quiet and sitting at our feet by the fire at home, where we really encounter 90% of the issues likely after puppyhood is out in the world when you're walking your dog. We were talking about leash aggression beforehand. A million different things. A guy with a funny hat can set a dog off. If you can get that worked in during the socialization period, you can make for a much more confident and comfortable dog down the road.
Dr. Lucier at the Purdue Veterinary School of Medicine, he's head of the behavior department there. He calls socialization vaccinating your puppy against scary things and future behavior problems.
Wow.
Like it is
Wow.
as important to him as a rabies vaccination or puppy booster. And it has become that important to me. So what's important too when you encounter novelty, talk confidently. Your dog reads where you're at. So, it's just like a 3-year-old toddler. If a toddler falls, they look at their mom. And if their mom says, "Oh my God, are you all right?" and gets all frantic,
Baby
the
cries,
child will
yeah.
cry. But if the mom says, "Oh, you're fine, get up," they'll get up and they'll sort of
Right.
charge ahead. So dogs are very much like that. Now, what's important is when you encounter something fearful, do not comfort your dog. I'm going to say that again.
Really?
Do not comfort your dog. It is so non-intuitive. You're going to have to stop yourself. But if you
Yeah.
comfort your dog, you're actually rewarding fear behavior. And you will turn your dog into a fearful dog. And I actually know someone that has done this with a puppy. Took a puppy that wasn't that confident to begin with, but really exacerbated the problem because in her attempt to socialize, whenever the puppy encountered something at all scary or novel, she scooped the puppy off the ground. She cooed to the puppy. She fed the puppy food. And so what the puppy got was the feedback was
that.
being scared is a really good thing. Versus, no, I'm not going to pick you up. And I'll throw treats near the scary thing. And if you want to go check it out, that's great. And if you don't, if you want to back up a little, that's okay too.
Sure.
So, one of the things when I'm encountering something scary with a puppy, my big question is, can you take a treat? Because when I'm out socializing, I take a hungry puppy.
Right,
I don't feed
right.
anything first. I want a hungry puppy. And if that hungry puppy cannot take a treat, then I know it's too scared. It's too close. So I
Right.
remove it. Let's get a little bit further away, but I'm happy and confident. Oh, Surprise had a meltdown over a flag. Flying. It's like, okay, well, that's a little scary. Let's go over here. Woo, flags are great.
Right.
Threw a little treats. Got him far enough away where he can kind of regroup, take some treats, and then encouraged him to get closer. But what's really critical about fearful objects, and this is true, actually Temple Grandin found this with cows, and it turns out to be true with everything. I shouldn't say everything, but with most of the animals that we're speaking of, if they have the opportunity to approach it at their own speed, if it's their decision, they will bounce back from the fear of it much faster than a dog that's dragged by a leash towards something scary. That lack of control really sticks.
Yeah.
So it's important to be confident when you're socializing your dog, to maintain a confident voice no matter what happens. Really, I say, jolly them up. Yay, everything's fun. Reward any confident behavior that you see. And if your puppy has really lost it, just totally terrified, and you get them out of the situation, yay, we're going to go over here, it's safer over here, and see if you can get them to do something simple like a sit or like looking at you. So you can reward them for an alternative behavior to the fear.
So you want to keep them tuned in at the very least.
You want to keep them tuned in, and you want to give them an alternate behavior.
Right.
That is a rewardable behavior.
Excellent.
So socialization is a very deep topic. We've just touched upon it a little bit, but this was my main thrust with Surprise. Socialization. The second thing that I think is really important, especially before a puppy is 5 months old, is bite inhibition. Most puppy owners that I know, their big complaint is the puppy's mouthing me, biting me, grabbing things. Puppies explore the world with their mouth. So mouthing puppies, it's perfectly
It's
normal.
what they do.
And if you've chosen a breed like a retriever or a lab, they can be a little bit more mouthy.
Right.
Herding breeds can be, right? They're testing
Sure,
out their strategy, right? That's
Yeah.
hardwired. So, but in general, all puppies are pretty mouthy.
Is that exacerbated by the fact that they're teething? I mean, I know dogs use their mouths all the time, but puppies in particular, they're teething, and then they've got these pinpoint little teeth that hurt.
And actually, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's what bite inhibition really means is a dog's ability to control its jaw strength.
Right.
When they have these the reason why they have razor sharp pin teeth is because they have not developed their adult jaw muscles.
Interesting.
So even though they're kind of painful, most people will tell you they don't really hurt. It's only when they start getting past 4 months
And they've
when
got
the
the jaw
muscles
strength.
start developing, and then you'll notice that corresponds with the adult teeth coming in, which are not as sharp,
Right.
but which can do a lot more damage because
Right,
once the
right.
muscles are rocking and rolling. So a lot of trainers will discourage dogs from mouthing you or biting you, puppies, which will teach a dog not to bite. but it will not teach them how to control their jaw strength. And so later in life, if an unfortunate incident occurs, the dog's tail gets stepped on or run over by a bike, the dog's in pain or in fear, and it goes to bite, because it hasn't been taught how to control its jaw strength, it can do a lot of damage. These are the dogs that get put to sleep. So I think that bite inhibition is one of the single most important things you can teach your dog, because it can save your dog's life. A dog with good bite inhibition can bite without breaking skin. And when I take on aggression cases, the first question I ask is, has the dog bitten? How bad was the bite? And if the bite was less than 1/4 of an inch, or I should say less than 1/4 of a canine, and there wasn't multiple strikes, I will work with the dog, and I have a better shot of helping that dog.
Right.
If a dog has, not only bitten down, but shaken and shredded, that's not a safe dog.
Right. And there's a whole analysis to dog bites.
There's a bite hierarchy that Dr. Ian Dunbar created. It's available online. But anyway, let's talk about how to teach bite inhibition, since this is what we're talking about.
And traditionally, in a sense, bite inhibition is something that's taught within the pack. Is that correct?
It's an excellent point. They learn this from their litter mates. So what happens when they play with their litter mates, if they use their mouth inappropriately, meaning too strongly, their litter mates will yelp and remove themselves. And we're going to do the same thing. So bite inhibition actually has 2 steps. The first step is, let's learn how to control our jaw strength.
Right.
So when your puppy is mouthing you, if your puppy mouths too hard, you can yip, you can ouch, but sound like a puppy. Ouch.
Keep it high-pitched and sharp.
Now, I will tell you, with some puppies, this ignites even more. That gets them excited.
Sure.
Oh, I'm going to play. So, because I think we're kind of bad at sounding like a puppy.
Right.
So I actually don't use ouch, but you can,
Right.
many people use ouch. Many dogs are sensitive to it. And that, if that gets your dog's attention, great. If it doesn't, you can sort of act hurt. Patricia McConnell, I tell you, can mimic dog yips like you can't believe. It's really impressive.
Well, she's done a lot of study in that area.
She said, well, right, that was what her PhD dissertation was on, vocalization. But so the volume of the ouch, the pitch of the ouch, but what you're trying to do is teach them that hurt.
Right.
Now, when they mouth again, if they mouth, and you're going to stay down there. I mean, you're not, in a way, you are sort of encouraging them to mouth, because you're trying to teach them something through the mouthing.
Right.
When they mouth you the second time too hard, you ouch and get up and leave the room. This is abandonment,
Gotcha.
right?
So the first time, just a yip.
Second time, you're out of there. Game
you
ends.
withdraw entirely.
And you're gone for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. You come back, you ignore the dog for 10 minutes. Not totally ignore them, but you're not going to engage them in this mouthing game again for at least 10 minutes. Then if you get down again and you play the game again, within a few days, they don't get the second try. So that maybe for the first 48 hours, it's ouch, and then ouch, I'm gone. After that, it's ouch, I'm gone.
Okay.
And what this creates is, after a week, a puppy that mouths you without ever mouthing too hard.
So what we're talking about here again then is it's not using your mouth is the bad thing.
It's how you're using your mouth.
So you're teaching them to use their mouth appropriately.
Right. And if you're in a good puppy socialization class and they're playing with other puppies, the other puppy play is reinforcing what you're doing at home and vice versa.
Sure.
So at the end of a week or so, depending on how much you've gotten to practice, you've got a puppy that can mouth you pretty consistently and never too hard.
Right.
And that's when you're ready for phase 2, which is when you teach the puppy that human beings are the biggest weenies imaginable. So with phase 2, as they mouth you, if their tooth touches you, ouch. If their tooth touches you again, ouch, and you leave. So it's the same thing as the first time, but the first time it was jaw strength.
Right.
Once you get that established, we move to phase 2, which is you don't touch me with your teeth.
Right. And it should be noted that dogs have particularly sensitive mouths. So this is not a difficult thing for a dog to tell when its teeth are striking your flesh just barely.
Well, their mouths are their most used tool in many ways. So it's their, it's like a hand to us. They have a lot more going on in their mouth too.
Right.
They've got the femoral nasal organ, which we've talked about in past podcasts. So, at the end of a couple of weeks, you have a dog that kind of mouths the air, but never really kind of gets to you. And that is a dog that will use his mouth appropriately in horrible situations. And I'm speaking from experience with this. I have been bitten by a dog with excellent bite inhibition. And this dog turned and bit me all the way up my leg, multiple strikes, and then went for my face. And actually missed my face and aimed at my chest. Wow. And this dog struck me every time. Every single time. And as it was happening, of course, it feels like 2 hours, but it's 2 seconds.
Right.
The only thing I thought in my head is, this is really going to hurt. And I didn't move because I didn't want to incite him. So I froze. I absolutely stood solid and I didn't move. And when it was all over, that dog hadn't left a dent. There wasn't even a bruise.
Really?
Not a bruise. Dog did not. And I'll tell you one thing, this dog has aggression issues. And the only reason this dog has not been euthanized is because this dog has beautiful bite inhibition.
Wow.
So he's reactive and he strikes, and we've worked on that a lot, and there's been great improvement, but he's still a reactive dog. I don't consider him a particularly safe dog.
Sure.
But he's safe in the fact that no matter how many times he's bitten, he's never broken skin.
Right. And important to note in our litigious society that this really is the kind of thing that can save your dog's life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And likewise, I've only been bitten 3 times, but I have been bitten by a dog that had absolutely no bite inhibition. He almost took off my finger.
Yeah.
And, and may I say, this was a dog that was wagging his tail, presented like there was no issue at all, which is one of the elements that, makes this dog so dangerous, because there was no growl. There was no ears back. There was no behavior. His behavior was completely inconsistent with what he did. Sure. And it happened fast, and I mean, it happened hard.
And the important thing about this, it seems, is really that socialization and bite inhibition, the 2 most important things you can do with your puppy right out of the gate.
That's what I believe. I mean, I know that, like I said, crate training and house training was right up there with it.
Sure, yeah.
But I think that we're all in such a rush to obedience train, and you can do that at any time. In our puppy socialization class at Canine Campus, for the first half hour, there's puppy play, and it's broken up every 30 seconds with a recall.
Right.
Come when called. If you come when called, you get to play again. If you don't, you have to sit out the next 30-second play session.
Yeah.
Then you get to try it again.
Yeah.
So I think I did work on recalls. I worked on heavily. Sure. I rewarded my dog for following me. I'd walk in the woods, and if Surprise got distracted, I'd hide.
Right.
So that kept him constantly checking in on me. Obviously, rewarded every time he came to me, made sure that when he did come to me, bad things didn't happen, like he didn't come inside, he could go back out and play, all that kind of stuff. So socialization and bite inhibition took up 80%, 70% of my energy.
Right.
The other 30% went to house training, which is just a given. Like, I don't even have to think about house training.
Sure, yeah.
Crate training is a component of house training for me.
Yeah.
And then recalls. And in fact, it wasn't until we got back from vacation that you took Surprise to his first basic obedience class.
Right.
And that was the first time. And at that point, he was just about 6 months old. Keep in mind, he's a mutt, so we're not exactly sure when he is, but his adult teeth had come in. And, in the midst of this, I'm not saying I didn't do anything else. We were teaching him to chew appropriate items.
Sure.
So, fairly early on, we did introduce give and take. So that, when he had an inappropriate item, a chase game did not ensue. Dropping it was a good idea.
Right.
And, within a couple of months, every time he came into a room, he knew what he could pick up and chew. He chose those items. When he chose inappropriately, for example, one day I was working on the computer and he came and he picked up my pant leg. It was the first time he'd tried it. I stopped everything. I left the room, shut the door with him in it. Waited 30 seconds, came back in, and did not sit down at the computer again. I knew he would try again. So I just stood at the door. He went for my pant leg again. I backed out. I shut the door 30 seconds. I had to do it 5 times in a row. Took about 7 minutes. He has never touched a pant leg since.
Wow.
So what's really critical with puppies is that when they try out a strategy, and that's what they're kids. They're trying to figure out what strategies are rewarding, which ones aren't. When they try a strategy that you don't like, that's inappropriate, you have to make sure it fails.
Right.
And the chewing of the pant leg failed because Mom, giver of all the best things in the world, left.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So if you have friends out there, if you yourself are planning to get a puppy, spring and summer is a big time for puppies. Yeah. Please get this information out about socialization and bite inhibition. It can not only save a dog's life, it can also save a child's face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Small boys are I think from age 7 to 11, they're the number one bite victims. I might have the ages wrong, but it's in that general range.
Right.
And
kids like to play with puppies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if something does go wrong and a dog has good bite inhibition, it's not going to be half as traumatic for the child,
right?
Physically or emotionally, or for the dog.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's really important, and we sort of. It's interesting as a dog trainer when I'm out socializing and people meet my puppy that are clients of mine, they're expecting him to know everything, right?
Right.
Because of the dog trainer. And, I would have to say, well, he doesn't know sit, because they'd immediately say sit, sit, sit. I'd say he doesn't know the word.
Right.
We're just out here socializing and having fun. And it was kind of funny. I could tell that some of them were a little disappointed that my dog wasn't an obedient superstar. But, and I wanted to add this. If you socialize your puppy really well, then when you concentrate your energy on obedience, it will be much more productive and efficient. When you have an under-socialized dog come into a class,
it's heavily distracting.
And it's overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It can be terrified of the other dogs. It can be really curious about the other dogs. I mean, they're a novelty.
Right.
When you took Surprise into class, sure, when he first got there, he was a little frustrated because he wanted to play with the gang. But in short order, he could focus and work with you because they weren't so novel.
Exactly.
He was playing with dogs all the time.
Yeah, and I think it'll be very telling to listeners when they download the socialization checklist that
the
you
scavenger
provide.
hunt with and please don't just take the scavenger hunt. Grab the instructions for it too,
right,
as well as bite inhibition instructions.
Just the myriad of different things that you're going to be looking for that I as a person really wouldn't have thought about. But it's amazing how puppies see the world probably a little different than adults do. And when I say adults, I mean adult people.
I want to thank Purdue because the instructions I have for bite inhibition and socialization relied heavily on their material. So I want to thank the Purdue Veterinary School. But it's true. So thank you, because I think and
it's a great opportunity to bond with your puppy too, which is something that is really fun to start as soon as possible, because it just enriches the relationship for a lifetime.
And it's fun to see a dog go into the world, like, Surprise is 6 months now, and when we take him out, he goes into the world expecting good things.
Yeah,
there might be some surprising things, and they might they might take him aback for a few seconds, but you really see that he's running on the assumption that it's going to be good.
Right, exactly.
And that's a lovely thing to see.
Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Devin. It's good to have you back to the podcast.
Good to be back.
Thanks for listening. Devin, thanks a lot, and we'll talk to you next time on the Canine Campus Podcast.